Hey, so pretty much everyone and their moms nowadays have been rushing over to this new piece of tech called Claude Code, you might have heard of it, in attempts to either work on some personal projects in a quicker manner or in general, most dominantly, just work on the business, have some growth in there. But people tend to get scared by the barrier to entry, meaning that they believe they have to be some kind of technically oriented person. They have to understand code just because it's included in there. But that's exactly why I'm here for this video. Today, I just wanted to show you a kind of no fluff manner how you are going to understand the core concepts of Claude Code. And I just want you to understand through watching this video and getting to the end of it, you will know and be significantly more productive within your Claude Code workspace and in general, just having a bigger understanding. But before I dive into this, who even am I? Why do I matter? My name's Adrian. I've been utilizing these types of tools generally for AI and automation purposes for the better part of the last 5-ish or so years. More specifically, in the last 9 months, I've been able to accumulate more than $1 million in revenue for the people that I've worked with, whether it be in, saved and or generated. But without tooting my own horn anymore, the no fluff version of today, what's going to happen is you're going to learn exactly what's Claude Code and how to set it up for yourself. What are IDEs in that regard, which, are the dreaded things that people dream of when it comes down to this, having nightmares of. What are the best workspace practices? Of course, we want to be pragmatic with the money that we spend on this. Setting up the Claude.md file, which I'll explain in a sec what it is. Going over what MCPs are, and in general, just exploring the workspace, learning the core concept of skills, aka how Anthropic, the company behind Claude as the LLM, are orienting their own workspace. So, taking it top to bottom, what even is Claude Code? So first, let's dive into a bit of a history lection. If you already know what I'm about to speak of, you may feel free to skip a couple of minutes ahead till we get into the gist. But in order to understand how it even came about, first point ever of this was large language models, right? They first appeared in 2022 to the public with GPT, soon followed by Perplexity. And what even are these? Well, these are just interfaces where you can jump in with Claude, with Perplexity GPT, and you can just chat to them, something that most majority of the people who understand these tools just, well, do in their free time. But this isn't automatable at all. It is a solid system. Over time, didn't really do much except return you kind of some data. Outside of the large language models, we did get some integration tools which didn't natively support AI, nor is that their functionality, but they essentially allowed you to connect different tools between each other. So what I'm showing right now is a low-code, no-code tool called N8N, where you can drop in these things that are called nodes, such as, when a form gets submitted, and then after, you can see this arrow is flowing into another little node here, which is called generate proposal. And this is like the LLM step. So we kind of got tools which integrated APIs. If you don't know what an API is, it's just basically a way for two programs to communicate with each other and just send data between each other. And then we can, makeshift generate these tools that kind of worked in their own certain way, but they were stuck in, say, one original format. So you had to account for every single edge case. That's what I'm trying to get at. And by, leveraging these tools efficiently back a couple of years ago, you can get a very, very solid solution when it comes down to, you pull some data from a Google Sheet, you pass it along to an LLM automatically. It's like, instead of you having to be behind the computer, you just have a system that does it for you. Like, wow, amazing. As time naturally went on, we also got some things that are called AI wrappers. And these are essentially just some form of SaaS tool like Lovable, which integrate these LLMs in the background and give you the functionality of generating documents on the fly, documents, projects, whatever it may be, generating, dashboards, generating different types of websites, connecting them even to some backend services, but they were also shaky and you didn't really have full control of the files. Whenever you tried to move infrastructure, it kind of broke and so on. That all led to, naturally, people or these companies that had these LLMs produce multiple different things like skills and connectors and ways for you to actually connect your own tools to them and kind of manipulate files in a way. But where this all broke is when it actually jumped to agentic tools. So what even does this fancy word agentic mean? Agentic, in a sense, means that these AI tools now, when connected successfully, can have access to our entire computers in terms of not literally like Ultron from Marvel, like it's not going to take your computer, but it can definitely interact with your files and folders, which significantly puts them ahead of any other tool when it comes down to doing everything and anything for us. So that's pretty much what Claude Code is. We do have an example of Codex as well. Perplexity created their little computer not too long ago, which is also a very, very powerful tool, kind of in the ballpark of these. But the two big players here are Claude Code and Codex. The point being, we're going to be focusing on Claude Code today more often than not. So how do you get to this thing? Well, essentially, first you need to actually be on a plan on Claude Code. So the first initial, or not Claude Code, but Claude in general. So you'd be jumping over to Claude.com's pricing website, and the lowest tier that you can get is the Pro one, which is, $17 over here. 20 if billed monthly. Damn them. Where essentially you get access to Claude Code, Claude Cowork, and a lot of different other functionalities, which we're not going to be covering today, but most importantly, you have Claude Code. After you get this, then you actually need to, well, install Claude Code, as it's something that is going to be living on your computer, hence why it can interact with it. So they have this website, if you can type it in over here. Essentially, it's a quick start guide on what you need to do to install it. So multiple different things. Now, this sounds, again, way too technical for some people. They might stop here. Different types of services you have. So whether you're on a Mac, whether you're on a Windows, you just need to copy this initial line within either your CMD or PowerShell, or naturally the native install, which would be within Mac OS, the terminal face. So this can seem very, very complex, but the only thing that you need to do realistically is copy whatever they have over here. You jump into here, you get the command prompt, either CMD or whatever, you paste it, and you're good to go. Now, not sure for Mac OS, haven't done it on that type of device, but on Windows, if you have never experienced Git or GitHub in any way, if you have never interacted with something like this, your PC might have run into an issue over here and actually ask you to download something that's known as a Git bash, which essentially is just an extension for GitHub first time that you're installing, so that it can also have access to everything and that you can actually push through stuff to GitHub and so on. It's this website, git-scm.com, and then you go over to the install. You have different types of versions that you take, and you just download this as well. Pretty self-explanatory. It will pop up in your downloads. You just jump on there and you're set to go. Once you're actually good and all set up, once you jump in this CMD or PowerShell or your own internal console on Mac, the only thing that you need to do realistically is type in Claude. As soon as you do that, it's going to spin up the process, and it's going to give us this, our wonderful little crab or sea urchin, or, well, whatever their mascot is here. Naturally, over here, you can do whatever you want. You can give it, dark light mode. This is exactly how it runs when you first time run it. So, we're going to choose dark mode. We can, choose enter, and then it's going to work. Then how do you want to connect to this? And it's always going to give you this connection option. So you actually want to go with the first one here, because that's how you set it up originally. You want to have an account with the subscription. We went with the Pro. Naturally, you have Max and other ones, but the biggest difference here would be how much usage you have. But essentially, it is going to be the first method over here. Then it's going to open up your browser to let you sign into this. It's just going to be an OAuth on your end, which you jump in. You can just continue with Google. That should be completely fine. And so, it's just going to do it for you, I guess, in that regard. Once you're logged into here, then everything is going to, clock into place. You just give it this authorize functionality, give it a couple of seconds, and that's pretty much it. You're all set up. You can close this window. Once you've done, you press enter, and boom, you're in. Claude can make mistakes, of course. Accessing the workspace, yes, I trust this folder, of course. You just give it access, and boom, you're in. However, this is the point where you have it installed on your computer. Awesome, step one done. After you've done this, we actually are going to kind of take a step back, because this seems to be a bit more complex for people. So instead of us working within that console and acting like, big coders, we're actually going to go to different tools that are called IDEs, aka Integrated Development Environments. So what are these even? These are tools on the internet where you can just manage your code. Your code lives within here. This is what developers use to, not natively, without AI and before, in the good old times of 2010s and so on, have developed their code. This is what bigger companies like, Visual Studio and actually Google, that released their anti-gravity not too long ago, released so people can interact with, LLMs and these types of agentic tools in a better manner. So anti-gravity is Google's most recent one. It is more oriented towards integrating LLMs between. So this one is a better go-to if you're new to it. Whereas Visual Studio Code pretty much does the exact same thing. It's just an older version that didn't natively ever consider that LLMs are going to be a part of it. But naturally, as everything evolves, they also jumped on the hype train. So today I'm going to be showing everything within anti-gravity. Same process goes. So you either click on download here, find your preferred device on which you want to download it. You're going to get your downloads in the top right corner. As always, you just set it up by default. Once that's done, then you're going to actually be able to jump in your workspace. Now we're going to be setting it up. So going back to my points up here, after we understood that, how does this even look like? So right over here, as you can see, I already instantiated it a bit for us. I created a demo workspace, which is a folder. So once you actually just download this, you're going to be greeted with a blank screen where it's like, where do you want to open your folder? What's your workspace, and so on. The only thing that you need to do is go over to your desktop, create a folder on it, name it whatever you'd like for now, or name it yourself if you're going to be using this for bigger purposes. And then just open that specific folder. So you go basically to something like this. You go into open folder, and then you select that folder. So do not enter, just select your folder, and it's going to open this for you. As you can see over here, this is a little tab where you can find every single file and or folder within that folder that you open as your workspace. That's why it's most important to open the actual folder, not go into it and then open it. Over here, as you can see, I have a file that's called the Claude.md one, which I actually reference in the next Claude, or in the next little bullet point over here. So what is the Claude.md folder? Claude Code works in a way where it always takes the context from the workspace's Claude alongside with a global one which lives further down the PC, which I will explain in probably another video. It's not important for you to understand this today, as for tutorial purposes. But the Claude.md is basically something that gets ingested every time you prompt within Claude. And this is a document that basically is its little brain. It's how it operates, it's what it follows. And some best practices of it would be something that we're going to go ahead and utilize. But before then, since this is going to take some time to run, we are going to actually figure out Claude Code. So for you, you might not even have this little option of Claude Code open in your IDE now. Most likely not. So how can you actually access it? You need to go down to these little blocks that are called extensions. And over here, you're just going to type in Claude Code. Once it actually loads in, you'll see that there's a big list of pretty much every NNE provider that has created something along these lines. Ideally, you'd go with the Anthropic. This is the official one. This is what the developers of Claude basically meant for this to be. And all of these other ones are good and can be useful, but they are from third parties, which, I would be careful when it comes down to that. People can put in malicious stuff and so on. But essentially, your gist is over here, you're going to jump into it and you're going to install it. As you can see, mine is already installed. Probably needs an update by now. I haven't clicked this in a couple of days. Once that's done, you just need to restart everything in that regard. Go back into, this Explorer. And once you're in, that's it. Then you're going to have this little Claude Code icon, and you're going to have, this specific one. So let me just close this one. And every time you click on this, you're going to open yourself a new little tab with a little buddy over here. So after that, I'm basically just going to give it an instruction. I will leave this Claude.md naturally in the description below so you can follow along with everything. But what am I going to jump into here? I'm basically going to jump into here and I'm going to say, hey man, what's up? I want you to instantiate my workspace by the Claude.md folder. My bad, that's the file, not the folder. And that's pretty much it. You just give it this and it's going to be working off of based what is in this document, which I'm going to show, and you're going to actually see this appear in real time. So you basically push this through, and then it's going to, as you can see, there's this little option here where you basically give it an visibility option where you can see the document that you are presenting currently, which is this Claude.md one. Now going through this while it's doing its own thing, as you can see over here, we have something that's called skills, which we'll be talking about soon in a sec. But essentially, they extend Claude's capability via the skill.md file. And over here, we have how, by the way, just jumping back to this, Claude is going to give you, by default, on a new workspace, constant, checks, can I do this bash command? And you're wondering, what is it doing? What is it doing? Essentially, it's just calling a couple of commands that you would essentially have to do in order to generate these files on that command level where you just imported that, like either your CMD or your PowerShell or whatever you're using. So this is completely fine. Just let it do its thing. It's not going to destroy your computer. Not yet, at least. But over here in this workspace, this is just a markdown file. So what is an MD file? Markdown file just stands for a textually well-oriented file. So this is nothing. This is no code. It's purely text that is formatted in a more nice way, like with these headings, subheadings, and these, paragraphs that it separates through commas. Pretty much nothing, just oriented text. And over here, we actually have examples. Like in this workspace, skill scripts do not live inside the skill folder. It needs to create, and you see how it's kind of mimicking. It's looking at this structure, and it's like, okay, so I need to generate this workspace over here that doesn't exist so that we have X, Y, and Z folders because that's the best practice. That's how we're going to be utilizing the least amount of tokens. Now, how did I even get to this file? Honestly, you can just ask Claude Code to generate one yourself, and then I would suggest you personalize it a bit to kind of your way of working. But I always recommend this type of structure when it comes down to your workspace. Why? Well, because it's modular. And if you're wondering why it's not appearing over here, well, because we haven't refreshed this. Once we actually refresh it, you can see we created something, or it created something out of nothing within our own folder. If you jump back to your desktop, you'll see that it actually, it did do these changes. So going through the workspace, what even is this? So the Claude.md, as I explained, is the brain. The git ignore, this is just a subfolder which utilizes its own thing to hide your keys that are going to be, well, hidden, that are the API keys. So if you have any idea into how sensitive that data is, it's essentially if someone has your API key, they can waste your credits through it because they can continue calling yours. This is a way to ensure that whatever you're building doesn't get leaked through the chats, doesn't get pushed through, to the LLMs so that people can read through them. Basically keeps you safe. The .env file over here is for now is empty, but this is just a hidden file. Everything that has this dot extension before the actual name of the file means that it's hidden. You know how in your file explorers you have an option to uncheck like the hidden files and folders? Well, that's pretty much it. It just doesn't allow it to be seen naturally. And over here you can see you have different types of keys, a nano banana key, and Google application credential, a Vein API key. These are just some of the tools that I had to leave within the skill or the Claude.md file. No worries on there. Execution, this is currently empty. Over here, we will be leaving every single script that your Claude will generate, because even though it's an LLM, it doesn't work off of magic. It actually utilizes Python to run all of this, or most likely Python. Naturally, that's how these skills will go with, because it's the simplest way and it's the most integratable language for AI. Now, don't be scared. You don't have to understand Python to understand this. The active folder will be here to get or keep every single data that we generate from our skills. So say, for example, if you want to create a workflow which generates websites or generates you proposals, documents, whatever not, it's going to be living in the active folder. And the .claude folder is where, we have agents, commands, and skills. Predominantly, the skills are what are you going to be using. These agents and commands are kind of like a sub feature, which I don't even utilize so much to my own regard. But the skills are the most important here. These agents and commands are something else that you can leverage over time, and hooks, and we can get into this another video. This is just for tutorial purposes again. But outside of that, pretty much that's how the workspace looks like. Now, if we're going to be jumping into building our source of skills, we first need to understand what a skill is and how does it work. So if I just jump back over here, a skill is basically just super condensed text that is going to explain to the Claude Code instance what it needs to do without feeding it too many tokens. So instead of you just going wild in this workspace and creating whatever you want, you actually have to be, well, conservative of credits, right? So how do credits work? What even is a credit? So roughly 0.75 of a single word is equal to 1 token or a credit, whatever you want to name it, to an LLM. Naturally, the more tokens that you utilize, the more money it's going to take you, the least or the less capabilities you're going to have, and so on. So the gist here is to feed as little context within our tool, but giving it kind of access so that it knows what it still needs to do. That's exactly what skills are. So they're in something that's called YAML format. YAML format is just these 3 lines above and beyond where the skill is. This is basically how Anthropic decided to create this. We have a name for the skill, and skills are these little sub workflows that are going to be executing things for us. So, you might have a skill, proposal generator, or I don't know, maybe invoice creator or inbox cleaner, and so on. So your name of your skill will be within this. Then the description, what it actually does. Argument hints, disable modification. All of these are just tools that Claude will get fed every time you call one of your skills, in order to actually, well, fulfill upon it without feeding in context each and every time. Because each and every time you actually jump into, say, one of these, interfaces, and you actually try to feed it like, hey, can you generate a document? And then you pump in a document in your template, and then it generates one for you. You refeed the entirety of its context window, and that's why you run out. But if you go into this option and you give it a skill each and every time, it's going to consume way less credits than instead of you just feeding it the entire context, it would just be feeding itself this tiny little paragraph that needs to understand what the skill does, and then it's going to actually call it. So significantly less on the tool costs, pretty much it. So now, say for example, if we want to generate some kind of skill, we would ideally create a new Claude Code instance over here and not, feed this one with context. So we are going to allow it to see the Claude.md, and we basically jump into here and say, okay, sure. For example, hey, I want to generate a skill that can log into a specific website, or not specifically log in, but just open a website which I want and give me back the context about it. Ideally, I just enter you a website URL, and you are able to open it, go through everything, scan the context, and return to me info about it. give me 3 to 5 different manners or ways we can do this upon, and go into plan mode before executing upon it. Essentially, what I said there with plan mode is, as you can see, there are different types of modes over here. You have edit automatically, you have ask before edits, you have the plan mode, you have the auto mode, and you have the effort. So the plan mode is actually very useful in our case because it's going to allow the bot, I'm going to chuck it over manually because it's going to take it some time. It's going to actually divide 3 to 5 different methods, as I instructed it to, on how we can actually do this. And that is good because it's utilizing a stronger model, the Opus specifically, to give you a good plan, which the lower models for less context than the bigger ones can just execute upon. We're gonna let it run over here. I don't want to continue just breaking my own speech, so I'm gonna pause the video here and just pick up after we kick off. Right? Take care. And we're back. Grabbed a hoodie for myself. It's pretty cold out here. Like people would say it's pretty warm in May, but nah. Also move my face to the left so that you guys can actually see bottom here. So it actually came up with a couple of different solutions over here. Like which approach would you want for the scan site skill? That's how it's going to name it. So the scan site will be actually the name of this skill that's going to be used. So it's recommending some options like Gina Reader plus Claude, which is the recommended. It's always going to put the most recommended like option top and the worst one at the bottom. So now it's going like pure web fetch, and web fetch is just a Claude functionality where you can go out to the internet, fire crawl, crawl paid, and then playwright Claude Vision. But let me kind of let you guys in on a little secret. We actually have an MCP that's going to do this for us. And what even is an MCP on that regard? Well, if APIs right over here were ways of two tools communicating with each other. So let's say, for example, I don't know, this is maybe Instagram, horribly drawn by the way, and this is maybe Facebook. That means that we had an API on over this end, and both of these tools have their own API, and that just makes it so that they can communicate with each other. So if some data needs to go from Instagram to Facebook, then it would actually have to utilize Facebook's API to send it over, vice versa, pretty much it. MCPs, on the other hand, otherwise known as modal context protocols, my bad, are essentially the same thing except for LLMs. So it's a way for LLMs to access these tools and send data between apps. You have this wonderful website. How do you even know which ones we're going to be utilizing, since there's tons? It's called mcpservers.org, so awesome MCP servers. Over here, you can find tons and tons of very, very useful ones. And I would always recommend for you to go up here and to actually check the reviews out, which ones are official, ones which are not, because the same as extensions within naturally these IDEs, people tend to put malicious stuff within these MCP servers as well. They take like one that's super similar in name to a popular one, they change one letter, and then you download that one, you insert into a workspace. Or if you just say, if you let Claude Code do it, like if I can just say over here, go to an MCP and do cool shit for me, and then it's just going to go on a random one, and it can cause you problems. But in this regard, we actually are going to go to this one. It's called Chrome DevTools. Now, this is something that I knew from, before making this video, of course, and it's something that you might have not known about, but just to speed up the process. This right here is an official MCP, which if we click on it, can actually do key features like getting performance insights, advanced browser debugging, reliable automation. But what does that clearly mean? This MCP actually allows Claude to spin up a browser for us on Google, of course, which it can actually utilize to go out and do things that we ask it to. So we're actually going to be utilizing this to perform this skill. And how do we get started? Well, it's simple. You can either tell it to go out and get the Chrome DevTools official one, which it can get, but while we're here, we can just grab this one right from ourselves. This is the little extension that it's going to be. And then we're just going to go back to Claude Code, and you actually have an option of other, aka not letting Claude decide, where you just give it its own input. For example, we go to other and say, something along the lines of, hey, I actually want you to utilize Chrome DevTools MCP to do this. I want you to create a new file, which is .mcp.json, and utilize this specific MCP code. And then we're just going to paste this simply. Now, what I mentioned here, which is this .mcp.json format, is just a typical file that you utilize to grab your MCPs in. And then we just let it do this, and then we just submit our answers. And then we wait for it to, kick back up. We're still in plan mode, by the way, but here you can see its actual thinking process, just to go through that as well. So over here it's just doing some glob patterns and so on. These are just basically different types of, how do I say, commands that it's running in the background in order to ensure that everything is, working as is, basically machine code. And then it's actually speaking to us, empty skills execution folders, greenfield. Okay, the Claude.md conventionally basically understand its thought process, what it's doing here. Got it, Chrome DevTools MCP. Let me rewrite the plan. Still writing up a plan for us. And you'll see when this plan mode's done, boom, thank you, you're actually going to get a plan just like this one. So basically a little document which tells you, okay, what is it going to do? It's going to create a new, in the demo workspace over here on my desktop, it's going to put this in the MCP. Then we're going to actually create a new skill. It's going to be scan site, open any URL in real Chrome browser with Chrome DevTools. Then it's going to body instruction Claude. This essentially just this code. You don't have to think about it, how you'll invoke it, and then boom, this is how we're going to call the skill. We're going to type in /scan site. This looks pretty good to me. And we just go into yes and auto accept. And then it's going to be banging out its own work. While that actually happens, I wanted to take your attention over here through the Claude.md file and just go down to here. So all of this up above is something that basically, see, it already generated. It kind of threw me off what I was trying to say there, but we'll forgive it for now. The main thing being is this, what I'm over here showing. Some of this was computed through Claude, of course. But the specific things down here, which I always utilize within my own workspace, which I picked up from a couple of different creators, being completely real with you, is that we have some conventions for workspaces, such as extended thinking and context budget. But more importantly, you see now it's trying to write the skill MD. Pardon me for context switching here, but as you can see, it's basically creating files on our behalf and just asking us to create them. You do have dangerously permission, like allow permissions mode later on. If you want to access it, feel free to, you can go into the extension settings and create it there. This is a new workspace, hence why it's not already involved, but please be careful about it, because then it literally does everything without, unless you're certain about what it's doing, it's just going to do whatever it wants. Very rare that it's going to do anything harmful, but there have been situations on the internet. Outside of that, what I was about to say, it's like troubleshooting. So if a skill is not triggering, check descriptions, keyword match, natural language. These are some of the dash hyphens that I will put alongside in the Claude.md, which I'm going to send to this video. But this is also a key important thing, self-annealing. So skills are going to break. Skills are not going to perform each and every time how you intended them to, because it's code. It's just an LLM that believes it's creating something that works. And in this regard, instead of, let me just draw that for example. So say if you're trying to get from one island to, maybe another, and the another one is really, really far, and you try to go in one shot, well, unfortunately for us humans, that process may go, if you want to, end up here, and we try, and we just set one path and we just go for it, we book it, we might end up all the way over here, which could be miles off the target. And this is what AI does as well. But what AI is super good at is reiterating through this type of process of self-annealing, that instead of it following this type of path, it can, start building. And then we figure out, okay, now it's just pretty solid. We're a bit way to the right, so we need to course to the left, and then we go over to here. And then it's too over to the left, and then we kind of need to course correct. And this is basically what we're doing with the self-annealing functionality. Each and every time our AI or our Claude code runs into an issue, it's going to run this back, it's going to fix it, and it's going to update its own code and skill to be like, hey, never run into this issue again, don't even try it. This is also something that's going to save you guys tons of different credits and in general tokens, because, well, you're not going to be running the same error each and every time. And that's pretty much it. How it runs basically says run the skill, error occurs, fix the immediate problem, patch the skill, and then resume. Boom. What to patch? Now, wrong values, if you give it a wrong API endpoint. APIs do tend to change. This is a common error. Missing steps, forgot to install something on there. Flawed logic and scripts, incorrect assumption, something along these lines. However, what does it not need to patch? Well, sometimes environmental issues happen. Like sometimes your Wi-Fi is down. You don't want it to try and patch that, right? Because that would effectively render the skill useless. User input errors, of course, something along these lines. And, give it a couple of examples over here. And that's pretty much it. So as we can see over here, it's done. It did its own due diligence, it installed the tool, and if now we check our Claude and our skills, you can actually see there's a skill MD in here, which is like, hey, name, scan site, and then description, open any URL in real Chrome browser via Chrome DevTools and return structured context company, etc, etc. Scan site, and then why this is good for context, You remember when I said the YAML format? Well, this is that YAML format. So instead of all of this document being ingested every time you prompt Claude, only this will be, only it will read about, what's that, maybe 15 tokens? Not too many, like more, maybe 30-ish or something. But outside of that, it's just going to load that. And then only once you're certain that you want this loaded in, then it's going to actually perform the amount of tokens that it needs to call the entire of this script and understand what it needs to do. Very powerful. So for example, if we were to, try and call this right now, if we created a new Claude Code instance, we can actually type in / over down here. And as you can see, now tons of different skills pop up. Like these ones are Claude's internal ones, such as batch, Claude API, clear, compact, context, and so on. But eventually, if we go down to scan site, which is our own one, well, it's our own one. We can essentially type it in or just select it. We get the scan site, and then say, for example, I want to go to my own website. So please feel free to do this one. And then I just, let it do its thing. Now it's actually going to try to perform the thing that I essentially wanted to do. Now it's, discombobulating. You have all these funny words that Claude, puts in. Thought for 0 seconds. Now it needs to actually do something. Now about the Chrome DevTools MCP, this will quite literally open a new, tab in the background and creating an output folder. So as you can see, it's quite literally navigating to my own website. As you can see right over here, it opened it up perfectly fine. And now it's just giving you out pages. So as you can see, it sometimes runs commands, then gives you the output just so you can see it visually. That shouldn't concern you. Got homepage content. Now I'll take a screenshot and visit the case studies page. Successfully navigated. Now if we actually go back to, say for example, wherever this was, it actually is navigating on its own. So I'm not doing a thing here. I'm just opening, as it's moving along, and it's actually doing all the work for me. Now it's going through different types of case studies. It's going to one, the second one, the third one on my page and so on. So yeah, well, again, pause the video here, not to keep you waiting since it's pretty long. It's like half an hour already, just so we can, have some kind of time track. So get back to you soon. Okay, just about got done. As you can see over here, now it created a new folder, or not a new folder, but it added like subfolders within the folders called scan site, same name as the skill, and it added onestrong.com. And in there, it actually filled it out with this JSON, which is just like a URL and whatever the case studies were, because we didn't give it a concrete what we actually wanted the page to do. It just returned something that it presumed. And in this case, it was like the case studies and the unique things it picked up. And it took a screenshot of my entire homepage, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's how skills work in a nutshell. Now, of course, this was a skill that really doesn't have any meaningful usage. So let's actually create something that can actually get used. So this is how we're going to do it. Naturally, website generation is something that everyone thinks of when it comes down to AI, and that's what we're going to try and replicate now with this similar system. So there's this website, which I saw again from a couple of content creators, which is called godly.websites. It's essentially a collection of really, really over the top and pretty like landing pages that people tend to build, whether it be for SaaS apps or for general like bios or blog posts or whatever not. And perhaps you really like some of this and you'd like to copy it over. So for example, I don't know, maybe this. We can completely do this through a skill. So first and foremost, let's go and actually prompt the skill out. So let's say, or this would be a new chat actually. We create a new chat. It's like, hey, I want to create a new skill, which is going to take a viewport screenshot of the entire website and then recreate that website one through one. Naturally put it in its own active folder. And I want you to continue working on this website, or I want the skill to continually work on this website until it's 100% sure that it copied it by having a workflow where it screenshots the before and after and compares it until we get it done. And now, before I even just jump in and let this run, I'll actually provide it directly with a screenshot. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to find this website, like it's mixed panel, right? We're going to open this website up. Very, very pretty. So we're going to right click on it. We're going to go to inspect element. Now it's going to pop up this big command where you can see essentially how data is passing through as time goes by and what the memory is and so on, but that doesn't really matter to you. What matters is that we changed this dimensions over here to 1920 to 1080. That's the best monitor size or in general perspective on there. Then what we want to do is go to these three dots, and we want to capture a full-size screenshot, which is going to go ahead and basically take that big viewport page that you just saw. Then it's going to, well, download it for us, funnily enough. And as you can see, it took a screenshot of the entire page through and through. There's this big white panel here. I presume that's just because we had to actually scroll through the website, but doesn't matter. It's a key concept. And after, we have this, it's a relatively big file. Like if we go into the information about the file, we can see that it's 9 megabytes. Like that's a lot to feed to AI. So instead of just going to that, we're actually going to go to resizing some images. And this is a tool that I typically go to when it comes down to that. So we're just going to select an image, select one, and we can then just resize it by either percentage. I typically go percentage. We can go, I don't know, 50% smaller. Sounds about right. And we just let it resize. Once this is done, then we're going to be taking this specific document, pumping it into the chat. Once it's in there, we're going to see how that magic works. So yeah, my internet's pretty bad, so I'm just gonna, let this run in the background, not take you guys for a spin here. Okay, now we got it right here. As you can see, once we zoom in, it's just a tad bit, just a tad bit lost its quality, but we actually, instead of keeping it at 9 megabytes, we actually have 2.2 now, which is way more reasonable to this specific LLM. So we're gonna take that, we're gonna drag it over here into Gravity, and we're going to actually hold shift to drop it into the editor, because if you let it release without the shift, it's going to pop up like one of these pictures at the side. So boom, I'm gonna let it in there, and yeah, pretty much it. From then on, we're just gonna let it rip, and it's going to start editing automatically. Since we don't need to go into plan mode for this, it's pretty self-explanatory what we need to have happen. And yeah, we're just gonna let it look at Claude.md, and again, probably just gonna cut off here, let it do its thing, and I'll come back to you as soon as possible. So as you can see, now it's just asking me, what's the output structure for the clone? So even though we just gave it examples and what we want it to do, it's always going to ask you, this is its own functionality to kind of course correct as we go along. But I don't want a too complicated website. So it's single file tailwind CDN, like you just want something else. And then it's, again, vanilla CSS, no framework. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. It's just, freestyle it as much as humanly possible. Just simple websites here. How aggressive should the matching be? Pixel perfect, max 12 IDEs recommended. Loop until Claude reports 0 deltas of any severity, capped at 12 iterations. Best quality, more tokens. Major clean, max 6 iterations. One shot, no compare loop. Loop until no critical or major deltas. So yeah, let's take the middle option for this. Let's just, let it run its own thing. And yeah, then it's going to pretty much do the exact same thing. It's going to reiterate, it's going to speak, and then it's actually going to use this Chrome DevTools to perform similar screenshots to what we just manually did, which is it's going to open up the Google Chrome. Once it's created something, it's going to screenshot, then compare based to what you dropped in. And the thing I didn't actually tell it to do is what is the input. So ideally, I'm just going to speak right now. This is another functionality. It's like, I'm going to say, hey, also, I forgot to mention, but for the input of this skill, I would love to just put in one of these images or these long viewport scan of the websites, and then you can create or the skill can create the website based off of that. And then you can post this directly to it while it's working, and you won't interrupt it by no means. It will stop and think what you have just said, and then it's going to integrate it. It's actually going to figure out whether or not it's good to integrate that as a last feature, or it's going to change that right about now. So you can interrupt it. You can just say whenever you want things, and it's still going to just continue doing it. The only way that you can stop it is by this button right here. Even if you do stop it, if you just say, hey, please continue working on this, it's going to continue working on it just where it picked up, because it has its own context window. While we're on context windows, we didn't really appreciate this, but over here where my mouse is currently, after you've been building within the same iteration of Claude, you'll actually run into a circle. My mouth just won't work today. A circle, which is going to get filled up gradually as time goes on, or a ring, whatever you want. And it's going to kind of tell you how much context you have used so far. It's going to start off at 0, and then it's going to be filling it up. This will, I think, trigger roughly at the halfway point or a bit above, which essentially it's telling you, hey, there's so much context in here, there are so many tokens that we called, that it's time that I'm going to start, or it's going to start losing a bit of the context. And how do you prevent this? Well, two ways. Either you start a new chat with the previous context once you've come to a good checkpoint on the build, where it's like, okay, now the other model can, because the worst thing that you can do is cut it off and cut off the context in between builds. So ideally you would have it leave some kind of checkpoint off when it's completed, and it has something that it's done, then you can pass it along to the next. Or you can just use /compact. So you can say something along these lines, and it's automatically going to compact the convo. Ideally, you wouldn't let it go to 100%. You would stay somewhere at 75 or so, and then it can compact. Basically, it's going to do the same thing that we do with skills, except it's going to summarize your entire convo, where it's going to say, hey, continue the speech with the user that was essentially referencing, and then what it did. So we did X, Y, and Z. We left off here. You need to do this, this, and this, and that. So that's another point that you can make on it. But yeah, outside of that, this is just, it's creating its own to-do list. It's creating writing, execution, clone website pi, writing Claude skills, verifying file structure, reporting usage, and then it's just going to go through this. So again, not too much for us here to do except, bear the fruit of our own labor and wait for it to finish. Okay, so just about got done, and actually in the middle of a process, I need to reference this, is it created, and then it told me that we need two things. We need the Anthropic API key. Essentially, even though you do have Claude Code, sometimes when you create skills that need to call an LLM externally, even though it is Claude itself, they will require you to pay additionally, or another subscription where you go in and give like their API key and do their API service and so on. But I frankly didn't want to do that for this because it kind of beats the purpose of the video. So what you guys can say is like I did, I don't want to use the Anthropic API key. I want you to do it, like as in my own instance of Claude Code. It understood and it restructured it. Matter of fact, it didn't even need a Python script for this. It just needed a skill, since it's going to be invoking its own functionality. So it doesn't need Python to run. It understands what it needs to do. Then it went through that and basically did it. So it said, try it. We can either do it with /clone website and then a specific URL, or /clone website, then that, or just /clone website and paste a screenshot of whatever we basically want, which is the viewport angle. So I'm just going to go through the same process of doing it for my own website. I'm going to grab a big viewport and I'm just going to paste it in here, and we'll see what it can generate basically off of that. Okay, so just got done with the screenshot, but I actually did miss a single thing which I wanted to address now. Is outside of the screenshot, what is really useful to throw in something like a website developer like this is actually going back to this inspect page. You see this little body tag right here? If you go to it and you actually right click and you go to copy, you grab the styles. This basically just grabs the CSS and how the website is generally, like you see how I hover over this, you see how the padding is laid out, and basically just the prettiness and how the website looks. So if you go back, we just paste in the styles as well, so it knows what it needs to go after. Here are the styles. We have the screenshot with the Claude.md. We have what it needs to follow. We have our little clone website skill, and then we just paste. And then it's going to go, peruse and do its own little thing. So yeah, I will show off the functionality when it actually pulls up the Chrome DevTools one, but for now it's just going to, utilize its own thinking pattern, just like always, utilize its own little non-existent brain to, well, compile this website for us. And yeah, that's in a nutshell how skills in general perform. Some are going to have JSON or JavaScript ones, some are going to be Python depending on the use case, some are going to be full-blown apps. Like that's also something I recommend. Sometimes you won't be able to pull together everything in skills. Sometimes it's going to be such a big project that you're gonna want to have a folder, just for its own thing, whether it be an active or so on, because it's not a repetitive process. You're not going to be recreating multiple apps. Skills are ideal when you actually are going to be utilizing this for multiple different times, when you're going to be running across, I don't know, maybe if you want to generate a proposal, if you want to generate invoices, if you want to follow up on leads, and then it's going to run each and every time. But if you're actually utilizing it for a case of like, hey, let's build out one big app, then it's probably going to be a workspace of its own, and that's a completely another story for another time. But for these, they just load the tools. Now it's going to write the HTML based on its observation, and I'm going to get back to you guys again once it at least gives some sign of life here. As you can see, it actually did run into an error right here. Stale Chrome instance. What was that? Well, it was the tab we had open before, and it was stale, and naturally the Chrome DevTools MCP, as the way it's created, you can't really have multiple ones, and it can interact weirdly when you have timed out on a request, basically. So it killed it, and trying again. It opened it, and as you can see, it's pretty damn close, right? It's actually copied perfectly where everything and anything should be. It's gotten the exact text. It just didn't pull the logo, but that's naturally because I didn't provide it with one. And yeah, it's for so far, so good. I mean, goddamn, it's pretty damn accurate for a one-shot prompt. And remember, this isn't even screenshotting yet to kind of verify functionality. It's right about to start doing that. So Pretty much kind of describes the power of these in just, short terms here. Again, sky's the limit. And we're back. As you can see, it did a couple of different iterations, got to the second one, critical 0, minor 3 remaining, first scenes. It gave us basically an overview like the one I'm opening right here in the new folder that I created, once run clone report. It basically said what are the minor issues, what are the major issues, and so on. And I even gave it tons of different grace. Like if you wanted to, you can be as ruthless here as you want. You can essentially tell it, hey, you are going to continue doing this until it's 1 through 1. It's like 0 mistakes. And of course, for testing purposes, I didn't really want to push it that far. And then how do you test this website? How does it actually look? If you just jump into the index, whatever your browser is, mine is Opera GX, double click on this, it's going to open it. So yeah, honestly, for something that didn't have pictures, and because especially the ones that are on my website were really, really hand-picked, as well as the logo and everything, it got really close. And of course, it tried to imitate my own image right over here, which is funny. And yeah, pretty much did everything from one singular screenshot. I had no instructions of getting any kind of animations in here, just recreating what had from the screenshot. So if you instruct it even further, say like, hey, I want the logos over here to actually move left to right. I want the testimonial section down here to move left to right, and so on, or give it some pictures. You can easily see how it can replicate 1 through 1, basically what you want, exactly whatever website you grab. So yeah, being completely real, this is just scratching the surface. And bringing the point home is that this whole video was supposed to kind of ease you into Claude Code and how that should go. Like this is a less than optimal and suboptimal, whatever you would mention it, use for this wonderful tool that is super, super competitive nowadays and what you can do with it. But again, just a simple video to guide you through on how you can think about utilizing this tool and the possibilities that you can be bashing out with it. But that's pretty much it. Of course, as videos go on, we are going to have different types of tutorials, whether it be for generating maybe even full-on builds, maybe a full-on app that you can log into. And actually this website you can post to Netlify or wherever your hosting is and just have it up there. So that's just one of the many use cases. All in all, that was pretty much it for the video. Don't want to take up any more of your guys' time. This is pretty much what I do 24/7. If you're a business owner and if you believe that I can bring any value to you, please feel free to shoot over and book your slot in through my calendar down below, and then actually we can get onto it and I'll be more than happy to chat. Outside of that, looking forward to speaking to you guys again. Any questions that you haven't left off in this video, feel free to leave in the comments and I'll get back as soon as possible. Outside of that, you have a stellar rest of your day and take care of yourself, okay? Gotcha. Bye-bye.